Alright, I'm going to talk about ratios and proportions. So first I'll just talk about ratios. Ratios are used to compare two different numbers. And they can be written different ways. So if we say I have a ratio of 1 to 2, I can write that as 1 with a colon to 2, or 1 to 2, or 1 over 2. These are all good and valid ways to use different ratios. Again, the colon, the word 2, or the little slash. So let's use a real life example. So if I say I have 1/4 to every 25 pennies. And in this case, if you have the units, it might not be a bad idea to leave them in there just to kind of help you keep track. So you could say 1 to 25. Now that's 1/4 for every 25 pennies. We could also write it as, for pennies to quarters, that would be 25 pennies to 1/4. It would not be good to say we have 25 quarters to every 1 penny. So you want to keep your numbers in line. Make sure that you've got everything right. So again, sometimes including the units is helpful. So let's just do another example. Another real life example. So let's say we have for every 1 teaspoon we have 5 milliliters. Okay, this is one that you actually see a lot, and you have to use this a lot. Again, if we have a liquid, 5 milliliters is the same as 1 teaspoon. So if we have multiple teaspoons, we can figure out how many milliliters we have. One way to find an equal ratio is just to multiply each side by the same number. So if we multiply each side by 2, so we have 2 teaspoons for every 10 milliliters. Again, 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 5 is 10. We can do another one. Multiply each side by 10. So we have 10 teaspoons, and that's the same as 50 milliliters. 10 to 50 is the same as 1 to 5. So that's just one way that you can use to find different ratios. Or again, these are the same ratios, and you can use them to find unknowns too, which is what we use with proportions. Proportions are just ratios of different amounts that are the same. So these are all ratios. So with the example that we had, so we had 1 teaspoon for 5 milliliters is the same as 2 teaspoons for 10 milliliters. Okay, this right here is a proportion. 2 ratios that are the same. Alright, so let's say we're given some unknown that we need to figure out. We know our ratio of 1 to 5. So say for every 1 teaspoon we have 5 milliliters. Alright, we'll go ahead and leave that up there. So 1 to 5, that's given. That's not going to change. But let's say we're given a problem. We have to figure out how many teaspoons we have if we're given a value. So let's just say that we're trying to figure out we have 80 milliliters. here. So we have 80 milliliters. We're trying to figure out how many teaspoons is that. All right, 80 in how milliliters is what in teaspoons. So the easiest way to do this probably is to set up two different ratios or proportion and leave the unknown in there, and we can use some a little bit of algebra to figure that out. All right, so 1 to 5 is equal to some unknown over 80 milliliters. All right, in this case, I like to leave the units in there. So we have one teaspoon and 5 milliliters. Okay. I said 80. Okay. All right, 1 to 5 is the same as something to 80. All right. Now remember, when we have this equation, we can kind of mess around with each side by multiplying or adding anything to each side. So if we multiply this by 3, we multiply this by 3, we get the same value. So we want to get rid of this 80 milliliters somehow. So we can multiply each side by 80 milliliters. Alright, so we have 80 milliliters times 1 teaspoon over 5 milliliters is equal to x time over 80 times 80. So our 80 milliliters actually crosses out. So we can think of this as x with like the 80 over 80 just canceling out. So another way to write this out is 1 teaspoon times 80 milliliters over 5 milliliters is equal to x. Alright, we're actually almost done. So we have x by herself, which is good. And in this case, we want to pay attention to the units. Since we have milliliters in both the numerator and the denominator, that can actually cancel out. But we just have teaspoon by itself, so we can't cancel that out, so we leave that there. So we plug into our calculators 1 times 80 over 5. Shouldn't be too hard. And we get 16. 16 teaspoons is equal to x. So there are 16 teaspoons in 80 milliliters. It's the same thing. And again, we had our value there, so we go ahead and leave that alone. Okay, let's do another example. Let's use tablespoons this time. So for every 1 tablespoon we have 15 milliliters. Alright, and we want to know how many milliliters are in, let's say, 5 tablespoons. Okay, so again, we're going to set up our ratios. So that'd be 1 to 5. So we have 1 to 15. Actually, just for fun, I'm going to say 15 to 1. So we have 15 milliliters in 1 tablespoon. Alright, you could say 1 over 15. That would be okay too, but again, you have to pay attention to your units. So that's the same as tablespoons right here. So we have tablespoons on the bottom. I think it'd be easier just to leave it on the bottom here. So we have All right, so we have some unknown milliliters, and we have five tablespoons. Okay, so this time we just multiply each side by 5 tablespoons. So that'd be 15. All right, multiply both sides by 15 tablespoons. So we have 15 tablespoons, or 15. Sorry. 15 milliliters times 5 tablespoons over 1 tablespoon is equal to X. So our tablespoons cancel out. We're left with 5 times 15 over 1, and that is 75. So if we have 5 tablespoons, we have 75 milliliters. All right. That's the answer. All right, there might be some times when you have your unknown answer that you're trying to get on the bottom, and that's fine. So let's just say we have a ratio of 2 over 3 is equal to 4 over x. Now again, in the problems that we did, we had x in the numerator. We could just multiply the denominator by on each side and get our unknown by itself. But in this case, our unknown is in the denominator, so it requires some extra steps, but it's the same. So again, we want to isolate our unknown. X is equal to y. So since it's tied to the numerator, we multiply both sides by x. Again, we have this equal sign, so we can do one thing on one side and do it to the other. We have times x times x. So we have 2 over 3 times x is equal to 4. We'll say 4x over x. Alright, and then x over x is 1, so that's just 4 times 1. That cancels out. Alright, so we have x times 2 over 3 is equal to 4. We do the same steps as we did before. Oops. Okay, so we want to get rid of this denominator. Alright, so we're going to multiply both sides by 3. Alright, so times 3, 4 times 3 is 12. And we have x times 2. So x times 2 is equal to 12. Alright. Now we just divide each side by 2. So we get, and our twos cancel out, so x is equal to 12 divided by 2, or 12 over 2. And that's equal to 6. Alright, so again, our original was 2 over 3 is equal to 4 over x. Now it requires some extra steps if our unknown is in the denominator. So just keep track of what you're dealing with, and you'll get the right answer. Alright. That about covers it. Again, you want to just pay real close attention to your unit. So like if in the previous problem that we did, we had like 15 tablespoons, or 1 tablespoon for every 15 milliliters. And if we say something like 30 milliliters or 2 tablespoons. Okay, so you want to be careful, because if we multiply both sides by tablespoons, so by 2 tablespoons we'll get 2 tablespoons times 1 tablespoon over 15 milliliters. And then we have 2 of the numerators with the same units together, and that we don't want to do. All right, so just do what you can just to keep track of your units, just so you don't have to worry about